Hello, the name is Osvaldo Antonio Nhaca, and I'm a human behavior specialist. And welcome to another one of these episodes where we explore human behavior, philosophy, psychology, and put all these ideas into one. And hopefully, you can take some of these ideas and share them. Today, I'm very excited about the topic that I'm going to be talking about. This topic was one where I researched it about 3 months ago, and I did a radio show on this piece. The topic that we'll be speaking about actually speaks on one of the very first people who actually started the field of psychology. And the gentleman's name was Wilhelm Wundt. Wilhelm Wundt was a German psychologist. He was the one who introduced us to experimental psychology, where he essentially was studying perception and how perception works in the real world and what influences our perception. Now, what Wilhelm Wundt really looked at in his work was how does the mind perceive things and what is it that leads us to act in the way that we do act. Now, his work went on again to form the field of psychology. He influenced a number of different psychologists throughout the years, and he is actually considered to be the grandfather of psychology. In his work, he introduced us to something which is called sequential contrast and simultaneous contrast. And this is what we're going to go in depth into. We're going to be discussing the difference between the two, and how this affects your mind, and how you actually, through these two different contrasts, are able to then awaken greater gratitude, love, and appreciation for any event that you do have. Now, with sequential contrast, how sequential contrast works is, suppose that you were in a relationship, and in this relationship you perceived that this relationship was a very bad relationship because of the bad experiences that you had. And then as soon as you get out of that relationship, you get into a different relationship. And you then conclude that this new relationship is better than the former relationship. That is essentially what sequential contrast is. What sequential contrast does is your brain takes information and adds times to it, and adds time to the information or the experience that you had, and contrasts it over time. Now, if you look at it in a different area, perhaps in the area of finance, if you go to an expensive restaurant, let's say for the sake of this example, in Sandton, South Africa, you walk in and you walk into a very expensive restaurant, you open the menu, and a simple starter meal goes for about 1,000 rand. You open that, you're like, wow, this is very expensive, whining and dining. Then you go to a lower income area or maybe you go to a lower fast food chain. Let's say, for example, you go to a McDonald's, and the McDonald's menu tells you that a full burger, full meal is about 150 rand. And you then, when you apply sequential contrasting, you're then comparing the two to say, well, that one is more expensive than this one. This one is cheaper than the other one. So relative to one another, one is cheaper and one is more expensive. That is sequential contrast. Now, the danger about sequential contrast when it comes to the mind and judgments and emotions is that you could perhaps be in a past relationship where you might say that the past relationship that I was in had all these highs. These were the highlights of the past relationship. And because you received in your perception more good than bad, you'll then get into a new relationship, compare the bad of the new relationship to the old one, and say, well, this relationship has a lower standards than the last relationship that I was in. And therefore, this relationship has a lower value than the other one, with the sequential contrasting. And another danger of sequential contrasting is that you don't take things in the value in which they come in, because you're adding time to it. And this could be a hindrance in your relationship when You would perhaps come home, let's say you come home and your partner does something that you perceive has more bad than good. Then over time, you put pressure on them to add good to the past event that, okay, over time, they need to make up for the bad that they did. And you now sequentially are adding the good in time to the bad that was done in the past. You're saying, okay, well, last week you let me down, you didn't inform me, you didn't spend time with me. Now you are making up for that specific event back in the past, and now you're trying to add the good to overshadow the bad that you perceive happened at that moment. Now that's the danger with sequential contrasting. Now sequential contrasting adds time to your perceptions because you're trying to then balance things out over time. Now simultaneous contrast, where is a thing that I really love doing, which is something that we do with the Demartini Method, where we essentially help you to simultaneously contrast any event in that specific moment in time. So with simultaneous contrast, what we do is we actually remove the time element from it. So again, we'll go to the example of being in the restaurant. In the restaurant, what we do is with the menu that you opened up, a starter is 1,000 Rand. What we're doing at that specific moment, we are simultaneously introducing a simultaneous contrast where when you believe that something is high, where is the equal and opposite of that at that specific moment in time? So in other words, where's the benefit or the drawback in that specific moment in time when it comes to that menu? So you're taking things and balancing out good and bad, or a challenge and support at that specific moment in time. So it balances it out in that specific moment in time, as opposed to sequential contrasting where over time you're adding it, or you're adding years to what you perceive is good or bad to try and balance that out. What we're doing is we are removing past and future and getting right into the present. And the moment you're able to go into the present tense, you're actually then able to engage more and be more present and open up your heart. And that then is the gateway for gratitude and love. And this, when you apply it to your relationship, the moment where you perceive the bad was happening, where was the equal and opposite? So for instance, the moment when the person was not contacting you, who at that specific moment in time was playing the equal opposite role, where you're simultaneously contrasting the perception that you're having, so it balances it out in the exact same space and time. So you're not adding to it, so then you won't get the person to then become guilty and have them add more good to the bad, because the moment they add that good comes with its own sets of bad attached to it, and so on and so forth. So the more good you go after, the more bad you're going to experience with it. But if you're only sequentially contrasting that, you're going to want to seek one and avoid the other. And this, you can see it when you become emotionally biased towards a specific outcome, where you can take, for example, I always speak about your value structures, where you impose what you believe to be most important in your value structures and impose that on somebody else, telling them you should be like this, you should be doing this. And if they're not doing that, then they have to make up for it by sequentially contrasting your values to somebody else. Whereas when you simultaneously do a contrast, what you're doing is you take your values and the other person's values, put them together, and then you create a new perspective. Well, we tend to call this the meaning, which Aristotle spoke about in his philosophy when he spoke about the golden mean. And in the golden mean, he simply is saying you're finding meaning into everything that you're doing. Finding meaning is finding the balancing point. And this is how you can find the balancing point, by actually learning more about simultaneous contrast. So the main points to take home is, with sequential contrasting, what you're doing is you're adding time and opposites to a past event over time. Whereas with simultaneous contrast, you are balancing out the good, the bad, or the support and the challenge in that specific moment in time. And when you simultaneously contrast support and challenge, what that does, it centers you, brings you to the present tense, which then gets you to be more grateful. And when you're grateful, you're then able to love whatever the experience is, whether good or bad, because you're at that balancing point. What simultaneous contrast, you're able to do that, taking two opposites, making them one, and therefore giving you a new reality, which is then the golden mean that Aristotle spoke about and Viktor Frankl spoke about in his Man's Search for Meaning, when he spoke about finding meaning. When you were speaking about finding meaning, was around how do you simultaneously contrast whatever event you're going through, seeing them from both sides in the exact same moment and exact same place and time. So you don't add time to it, and you don't try to subtract or add anything to it. You just see it as is, and therefore you get the reality of both sides. So thank you so much for joining me, and hope to see you soon.